little background. In 2013, I was sitting at a very fancy VC shop in New York as an entrepreneur in residence. I'd been an entrepreneur a couple times, had a couple of reasonable outcomes. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I like brands, and I like marketing, and I like data. And I was looking at all kinds of really interesting things. This shop is seed in Pinterest and Shopify and StubHub. And I got a phone call from a guy named Joey Levin, who is now the CEO of IAC. As you probably know, IAC is Tinder and Match and Vimeo and has been Expedia and has been all these things. And he calls me and says, "What do you think of About.com?" And I gave the answer that probably a lot of you would have given at the time, which was, I don't. Why would I? It's that like weird place you go when you Google something and you need to cook chicken or your knee hurts. I'm like, I don't, whatever. I'll talk to you about it if you want, because it seems smart. And that is the beginning of a story of, I think, how we found really interesting value in an old brand and fixed it and made it a brand for 2015. I'm going to freestyle the whole thing because it's not working. Can we go to there? Oh, perfect. So About.com, we are the largest publisher of expert content online, which means everything on our site is written by experts. It could be a doctor, it could be a chef, it could be a lawyer. And it's given us an incredible library of content that people really like. And because of that, we have an awful lot of traffic. Next slide. We are, as I said, we're 20 years old. We're a 1.0 darling. There aren't many 20-year-old web businesses. That is a very interesting challenge. There's not a lot on the web that you turn around. Usually when things don't work, they just die. Next. And again, in late 2012, IAC bought About.com from the New York Times, which we mentioned. They talked to me in early 13. I think the thesis was, there's this incredible content property that had been underinvested for a long time, and let's see what we can do with it. So at the time, we're a top 20 website. We have 1,000 experts, 100 million users, and we did 100 million in revenue. This is not some startup. This is a real business. It was really interesting business, which I would say at the time, sounds great. I'm like, yes, $100 million business, and I can come run it. This sounds awesome. And it's content. I like content. It's brands. I like brands. Here's the problem. Other than this clicker, here's the problem. Users and revenues were half of what they were a couple of years prior. The business was not doing well. Every key metric was declining rapidly, and not declining in a slow curve. One would argue we had an existential problem. If we didn't do something, About.com would not exist. The business had made 0 design changes since 2005 and no tech investment since 2006. And this is 2013 now. So if you think about all that's happened between then, there's been things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and all these things have happened, and these guys decided that the best course of action was to do nothing. And if you don't believe me, that is what we looked like in 2013. That is not a joke. That's not like the Wayback Machine. That's a real thing. That is what our mobile experience looked like. We were broken. We were very broken. And the main problem this business had was a defeated culture. There was a hardwired fear of change because prior ownership actually did something very smart for them. They needed cash. They ran this thing for cash. It was very profitable. They were not interested in innovation or risk. So the people who worked there became incredibly disinterested in innovation and risk. They also were incredibly disinterested in brand. And brand is incredibly important. We were very clearly on the wrong side of history. Like this was not going to end well. However, I think what IAC saw and what I came to see was a huge opportunity, which is, this is the first place I've worked since 1999 that I wasn't in the room where it started. And when you're starting something, you always, or when you're building brands, when you're doing anything, you need 2 things. You need someone to use your stuff, right? We had 100 million people using it, and you needed a value proposition that mattered, and we had that. We had this incredible library of content that people really liked. So we've got users, we've got content, we can make some dough. There's actually a huge opportunity here. The secondary benefit was, if I decided to do this and we decided to do this together, you can't fall off the floor. Like, there was no one outside of IAC or 6 of us thought that we could ever do this anyway, because they just assumed that this thing was gone and dead. So it was like the greatest trade you could ever make. It was a riskless trade. It's all upside or it's downside, and nobody would have thought that we would screw it up because it's already broken. So we had to do all of the things. We had to do everything. And in doing everything to fix a brand and in doing everything to fix an internet business, you have to prioritize what you're doing. And we prioritize like this. We're going to fix the culture. We're going to get people here that care and who are talented and who are going to do things. Then we're going to fix the product. You can't market yourself out of a problem on the internet. You have to have a product that works. And then we made the bet that if we did those two things, everything else would follow. And the first is culture. The first thing we learned is an organization takes on the personality of the people who run it. And we, as a result, came in and were relentlessly optimistic. Like, you would never hear a dissenting word from me, even if I would go home and tell my wife how effed up this place was and that nothing could possibly ever be fixed. You have to get people to believe, and if you believe, and you really believe, people will believe. And we had to change the way they thought, that we would question everything was on the table. Don't care what worked, don't care what didn't work. You guys clearly were clinging to stuff that you thought worked that wasn't working, so we have to kind of blow the place up. And in order to do that, we had to take a new approach. This was a business where no information or data were shared with anybody. People did things, they had no idea why they were doing them, and we just wanted to be transparent and honest so people could feel like they owned their decisions and they owned things. And I think what happened was, by doing this, it's very scary to people. And I thought that immediately everybody would follow us and follow me and be like, yes, we want transparency and honesty, we want change. This is a very American reference. It's a GIF, not a GIF. It's Will Ferrell in Old School. For those of you who've ever seen that movie, it's about an old guy that goes back to university, and he does this thing where he's running down the street streaking naked through the quad, and he wants everybody to follow him, but nobody wants to go streaking. So he's kind of running naked by himself through campus. That was me. I was running, screaming, trying to do these things, and then we quickly realized we had to get some people in the place that thought the way we thought. And we went out, and beginning with people that I knew, or the guys at IAC knew, we convinced some very key people to come from Google, from Condé Nast, that messaged there's going to be a new way that we do things here. And then actually the most important thing we did with personnel is the opposite of key hiring. We got rid of the non-believers. And you can't build a brand, and you can't fix something, and you can't move forward with non-believers. Excuse my language, we didn't give a shit how talented they were. If they weren't with the program, we had to get rid of them, and we did. And what that did was it freed everyone else up to be happy and freed everyone else up to do what they thought was right. And this is actually the single most important thing we did in fixing this brand, which was we redefined risk. And there was this crazy fear of failure at About that said, I don't want to try something because it might not work. And you test something on the internet, to keep things simple, there's two outcomes. There's a good outcome and a bad outcome. We changed that, and we said, no, there's not two outcomes. There's two data points. So you do something, there is no bad outcome. You learn something either way. So something may have A or may have B. Why are we arbitrarily saying which one is success? What you think is negative might actually be good, because we can learn something incredibly important. So we took the words success and failure out, and we just started calling it testing, and we called things A and B, and it was a subtle change, and it really made a huge difference. And then what we did is we, like those weird motivational posters with like the rabbit digging the hole, like determination. We have a lot of things like this around our office now that's like, we will happen to things. We are going to force change. If this isn't going to work, or we're not going to grow, it's going to be by our hand, not because something happened to us. So let's have ideas and let's do things. And in looking at our brand at the time, what we realized is we were probably the biggest brand in the world that didn't mean anything to anyone, which is a crazy place to be. We have 100 million people using us every month, and no one even knows what we do. They're like a place you get kind of information. So we had to figure that out. So that's where we go right to product. And we had totally lost sight of what we were. What people who worked there thought we were was a place to answer search questions where you can put programmatic and some premium advertising on a page and make money. And that is absolutely not what we are. What we are is a place to help people. We help you. We help you make better use of your time and your lives. We help you cook something. We help you paint your room. We help you when your knee hurts. We help you when your mom gets sick. We help people. It is a very noble thing we're doing, and we had to get people to understand that. We had to take this content we had, and we had to make it endemic, which means we had to work in verticals. The internet doesn't care that we're a general encyclopedia site. When they want food, it's got to look like food. When they want health, it's got to look like health. We had to do that. Simply, we had to stop making stuff that sucked. There's too much tolerance for things that were just bad. And being bad is a choice. Like, sucking is a choice. It takes the same amount of time to make something good as to make something bad, by and large. And data. We were going to learn from what we knew. All these users, all this content, we're going to learn from our data. And our first hire was a data scientist from NASA. We now have 5 PhDs that constantly look at how to solve your problem when you get to our site in the best, quickest way. And design is a core value. And the only way to do this is to not tolerate bad design. Design is not taste. Design can be tested. There's definitely a softness to it, but design is a key value. So then we rewrote every line of code, and we redesigned every pixel of About. And this is another thing we did was, that is an incredibly daunting task for a company of 250 people. So rather than say, we're going to rebuild the website from scratch, we broke it down into tiny pieces. And every group each week had a goal. And it was to get 1% better at whatever you were doing. And this 1% better technique, which we stumbled upon by accident because it's impossible to sell someone on a long-term project, was really effective for us in taking big projects and making them small and getting them to work. So this is what our site looks like now, a year and a half later. That is our desktop site. It looks totally different. We look like the internet. We solve problems. There are reams of data behind this. This is what our mobile site looks like now. It's a pleasure to use. It works. It's 2015. And then we went and we had to fix everything else. And now, 2.5 years after we started this, we are thriving. We have verticals that can compete. We've organized our content like the internet is organized. We've grown 250 people, 150 of them are new. Half of our 1,000 experts are new. They are people that write for the internet today, and they're real experts. And we mean something again. We mean something to people. We mean something to users. We mean something to advertisers. This is the thing we're most proud of. A site of our scale that can do 1 billion page views in a month, the average amount of time a user spends on our site now is 30% more than when we started. That, for us, is the achievement that says we've built something people care about and they want to use. We used to get all of our traffic from search. Now we get a bunch from social and email and direct traffic because we're a brand that matters and people know what we are. Our Q4 revenue will set records this year. And IAC cares about this. They probably care about this the most. We did all this stuff. We hired all these people and made all these changes. We make more money than when we started. And that's because brands matter. We built a brand and fixed the brand, and people care. And you can delight users, and you can make money doing it. And after like 10 years of nobody talking about us, people talk about us now. They write articles about us, which is very, very gratifying. And the lessons from all this. I'm very reluctant to give lessons because that story I just told you tells is a great story, but that definitely was not nearly as linear as it would appear, and it's definitely still ongoing. But the key lessons that we took from doing this are 3 things: culture, product, everything else. Whether it's a brand, whether it's marketing, whether it's a startup, whether it's this, these are the 3 things that work. This really, really worked for us, and it put us on a path where now, in 2015, that first conversation I had where it's, what is this thing? I don't want to work there. We now have no trouble hiring people. We have incredible retention of the new people we've hired. People are excited about what we're doing, and we're incredibly excited for the future. So thanks. That was it. I appreciate you guys listening. See you soon.